and I heard your
Welcome
voice.
to News Nation, Sam. You got to be ready at all times.
You got to be ready, Sam.
They're always testing you by having you not know what's going on.
Well, that's nothing new with me often. Some of the people that watched me over the years would attest to that. But, you know, today we saw the pageantry of the changeover that we're used to, almost in all the respects. It looked like the peaceful transition of power, but it was the most difficult and biggest change in power since Herbert Hoover turned it over to Franklin Roosevelt. And the old president and what he had done and was wanted to do and his policies, and the new president couldn't be starkly different from the standpoint of their approaches. I mean, I heard you, Chris, and you're right. The business about declaring that the two sexualities represented by his administration would be male and female doesn't make the big difference to the country's future. It makes a difference to the few Americans who are being marginalized, of course, out of existence by his words. But when he says, I'm going to take back the Panama Canal, he didn't say, you know, I'm sorry we gave it to them. I'm sorry we built it there. He said, and we're going to take it back. Well, how are you going to do that? You're going to send the military? Congress has the power to declare war, sir. You don't. Yes, if hostages are being held, you have the power as president to take certain actions. But you're not going to take back the Panama Canal unless you negotiate it. Now, why don't you say that instead of making these broad statements which are not true and cannot be done? And Chris, before I turn it back over to you, it is your program after all, I differ somewhat with the people who talked about tariffs. Certainly they were right. It's a regressive tariff in the sense that I pay for it if I buy a Chinese good that's coming to our country with a tariff on it. The China just raises the price and I pay the price. But other countries, we learned during the early 30s, can retaliate when the Smoot-Hawley tariff came into being. That was one of the principal reasons why we went into a Great Depression. And so what is he going to do? Start a trade war? Break with the old Republican Party's tradition of free trade makes the world easier to navigate when it comes to the economy of the world in which we now live, and cannot say it is America über alles, and we will do what we want to do, and you'll like it or not. That was sort of his tone. I'm sorry, the rest of the world, Xi Jinping with his nuclear submarines, yes, effective as we would have in our submarines with power to blow us up, and we have the power to blow them up. He's not going to say, oh, yes, whatever you say, sir. And if he wants to write love letters, like he said he wrote with the dictator of North Korea, well, maybe he could write a love letter to Xi and see if it works. But I doubt it, Chris. I doubt it.
Yeah, I think that TikTok is playing into that a little bit also in terms of a leverage war with China. But I really feel, and Sam, I want you to give me your straight take on this, which you have for 30 years. The lesson for media and the country in terms of how we process and what we focus on is the lesson, whatever he says about the Panama Canal, whatever he says about anything, don't go to the bank on that. Wait and see what actually happens. You remember John McCain, one of the last big public moments he had was when they asked him about Trump, whom he clearly didn't like as an individual. He said, I don't care what he says. Let's just see what he does. Is that the lesson for all of us?
Well, I think actions do speak louder than words. Absolutely. But words have a meaning, too. I think President Trump is president again because of his ability to be a great communicator. Ronald Reagan, great communicator. Franklin Roosevelt, great communicator. And Donald J. Trump, great communicator if you like the communication that you're getting from him. His style, for instance, appealed to people who, we talked about tariffs. With all due respect to my fellow Americans, I think a lot of Americans don't have any idea what a tariff is and how it might affect them. We expect our leaders to know. So he uses words that goes over their heads, perhaps, or some people's heads, including mine sometimes. But he does it effectively. If he talks about women and the way he treats them, I'm not going to go down a list of complaints that people have about President Trump. But if you like that, if you really feel that you've been marginalized by the elites of this country, you, Chris, me, huh? From a farm in the Depression in southern New Mexico, in an elite, well, then when he comes along and says, hey, I'll get the country back for you. We'll make America great again. I'd do it. I'd want it, particularly if I need a job. Of course, we've had more jobs created in the last 4 years than in recent times before then. It's not all.
Hey, thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your screen. And don't forget, click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.